Aloha and welcome to Kokua Council's meeting with Josh Green and Sylvia Luke, candidates for the offices of Hawaii's governor and lieutenant governor, respectively. We appreciate their willingness to meet with us. I'm Lila Mower, president of Kokua Council, one of Hawaii's oldest advocacy organizations with over 800 members and affiliates. Kokua Council's mission is to advocate, inform, and educate to improve the laws and policies which impact our community. Kokua Council's directors are volunteers, watchdogs, and advocates, each dedicated to making our community better and active within many other community-minded organizations. Let's begin our program today with a total of 4 minutes for Josh Green and Sylvia Luke to introduce themselves. Please go ahead, candidates.
Let me start here. And first of all, thank you, Lila and Kokua Council, Rick, and everyone who welcomed me and Sylvia here today. Please call me Josh, and I am really looking forward to this time together. There's a lot to share, so let me dive right in. There's a great deal at stake as we select the next leadership for our state. And so I hope you'll have a chance to ask me and Sylvia, who is a dear friend and extremely close partner in this adventure, any questions that come to mind. I'll tell you a little bit about myself as we dive in. I came to Hawaii more than 2 decades ago to care for people in Hawaii as a physician. I was asked to serve in the National Health Service Corps, and this assignment brought me to Kau on the Big Island, which was the experience of a lifetime. I became the doctor for over 8,000 patients on Big Island, about 4,000 who were Filipina and 4,000 who are Hawaiian, very, very few others down in that neck of the woods. And I really was taken into their lives and into their hearts, and they taught me the meaning of aloha. It was through that perspective that I saw the struggles people faced, addiction, trauma, behavioral health problems, and I decided to run for the House of Representatives to work on those challenges. I was grateful to be selected and then began to work not only on those challenges, but had a great break, which is I met Jamie, my wife, who's born in Kaneohe. She's a wonderful woman, went to Iolani and then Brown, and then came back for law school here. So we built a family. Today is actually my son's 12th birthday, and my daughter's 15. And we then moved to the Senate to take on other challenges like autism, homelessness. And before long, I ended up as lieutenant governor, which I'm forever grateful to have served. It's an extraordinary place to work. And I'm excited about Sylvia's opportunity to do that should we be chosen. But as lieutenant governor, as you know, I was the point person on COVID. And hopefully I made it a very meaningful experience where we had the lowest COVID rates in the country, the lowest mortality rates except for Vermont. And that was particularly important because our kupuna were very vulnerable. So like I said, it's been the honor of a lifetime. I would be humbled to have your support to be your next governor. And now let me turn it over to my partner, Sylvia.
Thank you, Josh. Kokua Council, I just want to thank you folks. You folks have been advocates for so many things, the elderly issues, homeless, housing, so many things. We rely on you as a resource, and we rely on you for guidance. And both Josh and I have so much respect for this group, and that's why we're just so honored that you're allowing us to speak to you folks and your membership. One of the things that I get asked a lot is, how are you guys getting along? And Josh and I, whenever we appear together, we can't fake the excitement. We get excited, we're always calling each other. He just called me today saying, hey, how's it going? And who does that, right? You think somebody like a lieutenant governor or somebody who potentially could be governor, he's not going to have time to call like a lieutenant governor candidate, but he calls me all the time to find out how I'm doing, if the week is going okay. And I'm not the only one he does that to. And this is a kind of caring individual who is passionate about taking on very important issues. He's ready to do the job, and we're very excited about this partnership. You can't have a more ready team. Josh has been a leader for the last 2 years during COVID. I've been working on many issues, including state finances and many issues that are of priority to the state as finance chair. So, you have a team that is knowledgeable and that is just ready to start. And we're here to answer all the questions you have. Aloha.
Mahalo very much. Provided quite an interesting insight. Kokua Council's directors will each pose a question, and the candidates will have a combined total of 4 minutes to respond to each question. I'll start with the first question. When the Hawaii Supreme Court reversed the judgment of the Circuit Court last month in State versus Richard Obrero, it opened the possibility that over 100 offenders involved in serious felony cases like murder, arson, kidnapping, robbery, drug trafficking, domestic violence, and sexual assault may be released. What is your position regarding this decision? Should the legislature amend Hawaii Revised Statutes Section 801-1, and if so, how?
Sylvia, may I take a quick crack at that and then turn over to you and your executive position in the ledge? So really quickly, we are very concerned about crime. Crime, and much of this crime emanates from drug addiction, and this is going to be a focus of our administration to make sure we actually get to the roots of these crimes and not just deal with them in the aftermath. Having said that, yes, the legislature will in time fix this, and we don't just come willy-nilly to a special session, just so people know. That's not really the process. What has to happen is you have to know that you have a real solution in place. What I did as Lieutenant Governor was I immediately contacted the Supreme Court, where I have relationships, and I asked them to make sure that they have added resources and time for grand juries. In addition to that, we know the legislature will have opportunities, perhaps in special session. The Senate, at the very least, will be in to deal with this, and the session is around the corner. It can be handled in the interval, but people who have made this a political subject really should be a little bit more careful. Overall, these are solutions that can be dealt with, but we'll be dealing with the roots of crime and not just the aftermath. Sylvia, may I defer to you a little bit there?
Yeah, thank you. Currently, both the House and the Senate leadership are taking a closer look at this issue. They've been in contact with, I believe, all the prosecuting attorney's office, but at the same time, they're also speaking with the public defender's office and the criminal bar, so which is various lawyers who deal with the criminal laws. They're finding out that it's not as simple as just changing the law, and a lot of times when you just change based on what they think is right, it has multiple consequences. So they're beginning to find out the more they try to change certain part of the law, it may have different consequences, which will be even worse for health and to protect the safety of our residents. And I think some of the prosecutors are understanding that too. The good thing is, because of the dialogue and because there was a call for a special session, they've already started discussing this issue. They have contacted different lawyers. They have contacted people who work with the judiciary and crafting legislation. I think the benefit of that, whether they come in for a special session now or not, the fact that they've already started that discussion will get them ready to act when they come in January. And if you think about it, January is not too far away from now, and you want to make sure that any changes to criminal law gets done for the protection of safety of individuals and protection of, also at the same time, protection of civil rights as well, and make sure that they get it done right. I think what's important for both Josh and I is a lot of times, people in the executive branch, we have a tendency to knee jerk and say, okay, we better do this or we better do that without consulting the legislators. And ultimately, it's the legislature that has to pass the law. And so we've been in communication with various legislators as well, and let them know that, when time comes, we will be in support of what they are proposing.
And I would add just a little bit more to what Sylvia said quite eloquently, and that is that we have these relationships that permeate through the legislature. I was able to call not just Sylvia as my partner, but Speaker Psyche and Senate President immediately to make sure that they were getting on the same page. We'll be able to do that on many levels, including protecting women's healthcare rights is another example. Having those relationships that run deep is going to really help us hit the ground running.
Okay, great. Thank you. So second question. Our kupuna care workforce shortages have resulted in care facility closures and an increase in unpaid, untrained family members caring for their loved ones. Our workforce cannot afford to live in Hawaii. How can your administration help this crisis? Thank you.
Well, I thank you for this question. Housing permeates every single other issue, it appears. We don't have enough nurses because housing is too expensive. We don't have enough teachers because housing is so expensive. It's difficult to have firefighters and police because, once again, housing is too expensive. So our priority, our top priority, I should say, across the board has been creating housing, affordable housing for the people of Hawaii. We've committed to over 10,000 units in the first term. And in addition to that, we have a very big head start. I'll defer to my partner here in a moment to talk about Hawaiian Homelands because she led that charge. But by creating extra inventory quickly, we will make it more possible that caregivers can actually afford to be here where the wages aren't always super high. We recognize that. And we want people to be able to age at home and get care at home or in facilities where, again, as LPNs or family aides, they really need to have a lot of extra support and housing so that they can afford to actually do the care. It's not just building housing, though. It's also cracking down on illegal Airbnbs, of which there are thousands, and we will be cracking down on those, and also vacant units that are across the state. They're peppered across the state, often owned by foreign investors, which is their prerogative to a degree, but that decreases the number of houses for our middle-class people that just want to take care of our loved ones. So that's a big deal. But why don't I pivot? One more thing, sorry. I do intend, whenever there's healthcare workforce issues, to work to the best of my ability to provide loan forgiveness for those who commit to caring for our local people, which will help with social workers and nurses and so on. But Sylvia has led on Department of Hawaiian Homelands and so many other issues. I think it would be great if I could lean on her here a moment to share what that will probably do for housing also.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick. Thanks. I keep wanting to say Lieutenant Governor or Governor, but that's a really good question. And one of the areas that we struggle with is finding good long-term care facilities and having individuals who are willing to take Quest patients and Medicaid care patients in their care homes. And as you know, I mean, even to find a care home that will care for your elderly, because these are loved ones that you're having somebody else, sometimes a stranger, care for them. And over the years, we've been losing more and more care homes because of workforce and because we don't pay enough when it comes to Medicaid disbursement. So this past year, one of the bills that we passed was a $18 million increase in subsidy. So that $18 million will be a one-time bump in subsidy for individuals who care for Medicaid patients. So these will be dispersed to not just the arches, but also all the care homes. They're calculating that disbursement now. So a lot of the arches will get a one-time large amount. The thing that is, in addition to that, the thing that we're working on right now, both Josh and I are working closely with DHS because we are doing an assessment across the board, including care homes and care facilities, about instead of a one-time boost, I think we need to just pay the reimbursement at a higher level. Otherwise, this is a type of work that people are not going to want to do. And it's getting harder and harder for us to find individuals who are willing to be nurse providers and care home providers, arches. So we are doing a assessment to do a survey of what is that appropriate increase will be. And so we're very excited about that.
Thanks. Hey, thanks both of you for being here and taking our questions. Here's my question. In your view, does the state of Hawaii have the authority to make public health mandates such as quarantines, lockdowns, masking, vaccinations? If yes, what are the thresholds that you would use? And if no, why not?
Thank you for that question, Doug. The state absolutely has the authority and needs to have the authority to intervene on occasion when there's a severe healthcare crisis or other crisis that could threaten life and limb, our public safety, our public health. In the case of COVID, I would remind people that the risk of fatality for one of our kupuna was 8,000 times higher than the risk of dying of the virus for a 25-year-old. So if the virus was spreading rampantly amongst young people and then going into intergenerational or multi-generational households, the rate of hospitalization, which would overwhelm our system in every way, and fatalities, which would be tragic in all ways also, was something we had to intervene on. So there are times. Now, it's rare. I think you would recognize that we've only had to do this once in the long foreseeable past, but it was very necessary. We had projected 4,479 fatalities per year if we didn't take action. Instead, as tragic as it's been, we've had just under 1,700 fatalities over the course of 2.5 years. And so we had to protect our state and our people. I don't push too hard for mandates of vaccinations. I instead ask people to get tested. I ask them to be safe, to wear masks, things that are in the good of all. And being in a society, we have to be responsible and respect that other people are more vulnerable on occasion. There are people who are getting cancer therapy and have immune compromise. There are individuals, like I mentioned earlier, that are very senior who are on medications that prevent them from fighting off infection. So this was important. We also rebuilt the healthcare system and our economy quite quickly, as you saw. But anyone who says that we should not take action is suggesting that they don't really want to do the job of looking out for the life of their constituents. And I think that that is a tragic decision that people might take. We had the lowest fatality rate through most of the COVID pandemic because of the love that people shared for one another and the responsible behavior that they demonstrated. We had just the best response that you could hope for. Sylvia was very instrumental fighting for a lot of the resources that needed to come. And let me give her some of this time too to comment.
You know, the last 2 years, you know, it wasn't just Hawaii, it was the nation and the international community dealt with this virus for the first time, right? You know, it was new, and it was a lot of times it was you had to make your best guesstimate. But Doug, when you ask what should be the basis of the decision, it's really about science. And both Josh and I are lovers of science. You know, Josh got his scholarship to Swarthmore because he did a huge paper on snails of all creatures, you know. So because of his research on snails, he got scholarship to Swarthmore. I actually studied, when I was in high school, the genetics of Drosophila flies, which is fruit flies. And so I know we're like showing our geek love. You know, you'll never have a more geek team, but we're both lovers of what is fact and what is science, and that should be the driver. And you know, what was really sobering for me was that the county of Maui asked for 10,000 body bags, and they wanted us to set aside 10,000 body bags because that was based on their estimate of how many people could potentially pass away. So one of the things that I helped was to look at building the budget, and you know, that was a sobering fact. And
We're at 4 minutes.
Yeah, the fact that we were able to avoid that, it was because of some of the hard decisions that Josh and others had to make. So I'm just very thankful that we didn't have that type of tragedies in the state.
Aloha, and here's my question. A very large population of the state of Hawaii lives in condominiums and townhouses, and there is a serious epidemic of issues negatively impacting homeowners. These are often caused by mismanaged associations that are not in compliance with state laws. Unfortunately, there is no real enforcement of the very laws the state legislature enacts within HRS 514B. Even the basic right to vote at annual elections has unfair restrictions due to requirements to be physically present and not allowing mail-in ballots. If elected, what will you do to help address this very serious epidemic and ensure state laws are complied with?
I'll just preface this with a brief answer and then also share with my LG nominee. What I do think is we can more robustly use our Attorney General's office to help guide people. I do also live in a condo right now, and I've watched some of these conflicts arise, and it is extremely frustrating. I, of course, felt uncomfortable sitting on any of the leadership posts in my condo association because I didn't want it to, I didn't want my position as Lieutenant Governor to cloud that relationship. But I shared those frustrations and often felt like I myself didn't have as much advocacy as I would like to. Also, as a chairperson of the Health Committee for many years, I was worried that people's public health was often undermined because rules weren't being implemented adequately at the condo, in the condo facilities, because some had severe allergies. Some people had problems with smoke inhalation. Some people had, lots of challenges that they couldn't advocate for themselves. And then in addition to that, and then I'll turn it over to you, Sylvia, if it's okay. I do recognize as people get older, and they may very well be living in condominiums, it's more difficult to participate. Now, having said all that, we should be able to make it much easier, because even today, as we get together on the Zoom, it's quite convenient. It's very good and healthy to be able to meet more conveniently in a streamlined fashion. But we can add some meat to the bone on some of this regulation. A lot of times I have actually been called as Lieutenant Governor to ask if I would intervene or at least nudge people towards more fairness in the condo setting. And I have on occasion done that. Sylvia?
During my years in the legislature, I have never faced a more complicated set of laws than the condo laws. And even if you think it's a simple solution, I remember one year there was an effort to go electronic voting for membership or annual meeting, and even that. So even that, in as much as you think it's a simple legislation, that in itself caused so much controversy. So I never had an issue that was so controversial as condo laws. And I give credit to anyone who is willing to serve in their condo associations, who is willing to attend meetings, and who is willing to hold the various associations accountable, because even when you get the proxy letter, do you send in the proxy? Do you trust these individuals to make decisions for you? Do you not send the proxy? But then if that happens, and it's going to add to more costs, and it's we understand, having been in the legislature, both Josh and I, how complicated condo laws are, and as much as we think it's a simple solution, how do we deal with judicial foreclosures? How do we deal with the annual increases or proxy votes? And it's so complicated. But, I hear you, Greg. Part of it is enforcement, but even enforcement itself invites controversy as well. So I think it is really about us trying to reach out to the different groups. We have different association groups, and we have to try to figure out better compromises, because when you look at condo associations, it's individual homeowners who, regardless of whether they like it or not, they are forced to make a collective decision and forced to live together in close proximity. So it is complicated. And I think both Josh and I are willing to work with you, Greg, to resolve many of these complicated issues.
And one last quick thing: our neighborhood boards are vibrant here on Oahu, and as Governor and Lieutenant Governor, we're able to deploy leadership from our team to those regional boards to get direct input. Although we'll be very available to you too to have direct input to us.
Oh, that's very good. Hello, and thank you for coming. Well,
Thank you.
simple question here, multifaceted. We're told our state's recent issues with bribery charges are just the beginning of much deeper issues. What are your thoughts on this claim, and how does your administration plan to deal with accountability to recover and regain public trust? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dale. So there absolutely has been a conflict and a deep and terrible wound in trust, though not with me or Sylvia, though with others that we've worked with. You know, leading by example as a physician has helped me to lead without that kind of cloud over me. And, you know, I've been grateful for that, but there are lots of things that need to be done. Now, individuals across both political parties have done things that have been wrong over the years. Of course, we had grave concerns with public trust because of the Donald Trump administration and what went on there. And that was just quite terrible. But I would not want to gloss over the fact that at least two of the legislators that we've known made bad mistakes. Now, what we will do is we'll make sure that we empower our Attorney General's office to actually investigate these allegations and corruption and take action directly. We'll put more teeth in the penalties. And also there's lots of public financing and campaign spending rules that make a lot of sense to me that we might be able to do, because it's rare. It's very rare that people do something as terrible and stupid as taking a bribe. But often there's this understanding or this sense that there's just too much influence with donations during the time that we're making important decisions. Now, again, Sylvia and I have done our best to be careful, but curtailing some fundraising, if not all, during the legislative process makes a lot of sense. It should probably extend to she and I when we're adjudicating over bills before we decide whether to sign them into law or veto them. I happen to also think that we should at least study carefully term limits, because having people consider the experience that we've had less than full life might make sense, although there has been a counter argument that sometimes what you do is you end up creating the same problem with people who are on the staff and that they are influenced by money. But we, as veteran legislators who have done our very best to keep our noses clean, we'll do what we can to lead the rest of the people among us. Sylvia, you've been fairly close to that, and you've been a good role model. May I turn it over to you?
Yeah. So, you know, when especially two of the legislators were charged and convicted, basically, of bribery, it shook a lot of people. And, you know, one of them I was very close to because he was my vice chair. And that kind of betrayal, you know, it's really hard to recover from, because I trusted him to make decisions for the House, make decisions on behalf of the people. And I think that in itself is a lesson for all of us, you know. And in a way, I'm glad that Kalani got a pretty harsh penalty and pretty long sentence, because I think that should show everyone that, you know, especially if you're a elected official, you have a higher duty to represent, and you have a higher duty to keep faith and trust of government in your hands. And if you get caught, then you should be serving an extended period of time in prison. You know, one of the things that we did was for the first time, we funded and created a new unit. It was a corruption unit within the Attorney General's office, because year after year, it seems like it's the federal government that comes in to crack down on these issues. You know, the recent one in Maui, where you had the Maui Public Works or Maui employee who took $2 million worth of bribes, you know, that's really crazy. So I think we're hoping that the new corruption unit in the Attorney General's office will hold not just elected officials, but people in state government accountable.
Thank you. Recently, the last remaining coal-fired electric plant in Hawaii was taken off the grid at a time when oil is at its highest costs and inflation is at an all-time high, a perfect storm, which increased our cost of living, disproportionately impacting Kūpuna and others on limited incomes. What will you do if elected to address this most urgent issue? What would you consider bringing the coal-fired plant back online until there is a clear path and solutions to the goals established in Hawaii's Clean Energy Initiative. Thank you.
Sure. We can riff back and forth. As you can see, we're very good partners and have, let me actually underscore what you're seeing today, which is two thought leaders who like to work together and also are willing to share ideas as partners, which is unusual. But that's going to be hopefully to the benefit of our state. My inclination is to not bring the coal fire or fossil fuels back into play. I think we have to go forward. I really think, first of all, that would be a terrible sign to send to the world that we are not fully committed to renewables. I think what we should do instead is accelerate renewable energies. And I was just at a groundbreaking 2 days ago, actually, that's going to be a 42 megawatt solar enterprise, which is going to really decrease our overall costs. We're going to see as these solar plants come on board completely and battery capacity gets more robust, we're going to see us trend much closer to their cost, which is around like between 8 and 15 cents a kilowatt hour, which is so much lower. So I think we just really have to accelerate those projects the best we can. Been in advanced meetings with HECO telling them they have to speed these things up. They can't spend 6, 8, 10 years getting these projects online. And that means that we have to guide the PUC in a positive way to get all of these renewables online more quickly. I will say this, and though this is a bit controversial and we haven't fleshed this idea out, there might be a place for a brief pause on some of the fuel tax that the state has. It's controversial and difficult because even if you do such a thing, it's only going to bring 17 to 20 cents a gallon down of gas prices, for example. It's not home fuel, of course. And then, of course, it has consequences on whether you can fix our roads and whatnot. But the perfect storm will it will stop. It will recede before long. Eventually, of course, the war will end in Russia and the Ukraine. And also, we will see that all the benefits of this advanced work on solar and renewables, where we're number one in the country, is really going to come, kind of come home in a positive way. So that's where I am. Sylv, what are you thinking?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Josh. AES coal plant voluntarily decided to convert to clean energy and for us to revert supporting a coal plant is counterintuitive to our goal to having clean energy goals by 2045. I think one of the things that we need to change is we need to change the PUC rules. A lot of times there are renewable projects ready to go. So whether it's wind farm or whether it's solar farms, the part of the problem is, let me give you an example. Lanai, there was a project dedicated to provide wind energy. So they were going to put in wind turbines. The thing is, some of you may know, the thing is the energy and cost saving generated from that would have totally benefited Oahu residents, and that's why it failed. It wasn't put in to benefit the residents of Lanai. And you see wind farm and you see solar farm, you see other renewable projects put into sometimes very disparate communities. One of the things we need to change is PUC has a rule saying that if a renewable project is implemented, it has to benefit all communities. Well, Josh and I believe that if a community is willing to host a renewable energy project, then the host community should benefit first. So for instance, if the wind farm goes into Lanai, it should benefit the residents of Lanai first, or on the North Shore or other areas. So I think one of the things that we need to make sure is change the current PUC policy about benefiting for all ratepayers as opposed to benefiting the community that will serve as a host for many of these projects.
Well said.
Don, your question, please. You're muted.
Sorry, I was talking already. Okay, Governor Ige very recently put a halt to private-public partnership plans to develop the Aloha Stadium area. Without providing details of his plan going forward, $400 million was set aside for this project. which at times included, besides the stadium, a commercial entertainment district and affordable housing. What are your priorities regarding this large parcel in Halawa?
Thank you. Really complicated situation and question, but necessary for us to resolve and do a good job on, because we are going to face very likely some threat of recession, and having big projects, building projects, economic development going forward, especially like this, is helpful to avert the full impact of a recession. So the governor hasn't given us a total telling of his plan, which is okay. He's still working through some of the details. I will say this, from the perspective of our administration, we see housing as a critical need. And so whatever is done ultimately at the Halawa site will need to include housing. It will either be done if the governor commits us to a rapid build with that $400 million, directly build the stadium. It will need us to do some pretty accelerated work on the rest of the parcel. We do need to be able to fund the infrastructure. That's very important. I thought that Sylvia spoke very eloquently about that recently. We have to be mindful that that infrastructure is going to need to be supported. And that's what we'll do. We have plans, like I said earlier, to build thousands of units in the coming years. Much of them are going to be on the TOD side, the transient oriented development side, meaning near the rail. And therefore, it's in the state's interest and all of our people's interest to build there and do urban infill. So expect us to build housing. The current plan calls for as many as 4,000 units on that site. If we get our act together, it would be mixed use housing, a lot of it affordable, some of it kind of in the premium space in order to afford the projects. But really, there's only one governor at a time, and I want to be respectful of that. Governor Ige has his full 8 years, and whether it is Green Luke or Iona and his running mate, Junior Tupai, running things, we think we want to defer overall to letting him finish his term. But Sylvia's done some very good leadership on this and was actually the appropriator of these resources. So let me give it to you, Sylvia.
Yeah. What is, Don, that's a really good question. And what was really unfortunate and what was telling was there was a disconnect with what Governor Ige wanted and what his administration wanted. So there was a complete disconnect, and you saw that play right in front of us in the spotlight where his employees were criticizing his decision. I think that kind of things lead to even more confusion, and we'll make sure that, Josh and I, if we are given the chance to lead the state, we will not have that type of conflicting issues with our departments, because Josh will pick people he completely trusts and they will all be aligned. So if the departments are saying one thing, the governor will say something along the same line. There cannot be open disagreement between the governor and his employees in public. So that's what happened, which is it's very unfortunate, and it leads to confusion. As far as this project is concerned, the problem that we have is that part of the proposal by DAG's consulting team was that the state turn over the development rights to the rest of the stadium parcel. And that should give everybody on this call a concern. And, we should pause that, only because we should not give up the authority to develop close to 80 acres of land to one private developer. And that was what the RFP was. And I think the governor did not articulate that. And so I think if he articulated that as a concern, then more people would take pause and go, yeah, you're right. We shouldn't give one entity the power to develop state lands, because at the end, we may not even get affordable housing, and affordable housing is really
We've gone over 4 minutes.
Oh, sorry for Josh and I. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we're nearing 12:10. So candidates, you will have a total of 4 minutes to make your closing remarks.
Okay, well, why don't I do a minute or two here? So thank you for welcoming us. it's a great pleasure to be with people, to share what we believe. Sylvia and I are doing that all across the state, and we've done it for many years. We face large problems here, and we are the two people, I believe, who are most equipped to deal with the challenges ahead. Sylvia, with decades of experience in a leadership level at the state, leading the most important committee, and actually, Hawaii has done very well on so many issues. We're the best health state in the country. We have the best quality of life repeatedly and described by so many people across the country. But we do have challenges. We have a housing challenge. We have a homeless challenge. As a physician who came to Hawaii to care for people, and now with a deeply rooted local family, it's been the honor of a lifetime to be lieutenant governor and take on some of these challenges. And so these last 4 years have equipped me as a kind of a wartime lieutenant governor to look at these problems, to know my heart and know how to help and care for people. But it's been an extraordinary experience. The combination of our efforts has done things like we built a trauma system with tobacco tax money, which also helped our community health centers. We passed laws to make sure children with autism got full coverage. You've seen recently the appropriation of over $600 million for Department of Hawaiian Homelands from Sylvia and her efforts. In addition to that, early pre-K education, which we haven't touched on yet, is now poised to go forward. And I've asked, and Sylvia has asked me to share that responsibility with her. And I'm eager to see someone of such great competence take that on. So we are a team that is built to act on lots of challenges. As to the past, problems emerge, they evolve. The methamphetamine crisis has grown. My opponent in the governorship was tasked to deal with that in the early 2000s, unfortunately didn't. And we've seen the impact of that in our state. He's a good person. I don't ever disparage anyone, but I will say that we are poised as a physician and an attorney, and with deep experience in the legislature, unlike ever before, to take on these problems. This will be really a new hope, we hope, for the state of Hawaii with a dynamic leadership team. But I have great respect for my partner in this adventure, Sylvia Luke, and I am just excited to bring all the energy that I have to these challenges. Sylvia?
Thank you, Josh. Thank you again to you folks for allowing this opportunity. The legislature last year committed so much money in different things, including bringing down and tackling the wait list for DHHL, homesteaders, early education, $200 million for early education, $300 million in new monies for affordable housing, and many, many more. Thanks to the efforts of people like Gary and Barbara, the ARP, for the first time, we created a new program called the Retirement Savings Program. It's going to take a lot of effort for people in executive branch that knows how to implement these programs to get it done. And Josh and I are ready to take on these issues and make them realities. I think over the years that there has been a disconnect between what the legislature passes and what is implemented, and it takes a long time. That's where we differ. We have the legislative knowledge because we both served in the legislature, where we are clearly versed in many of the areas and laws and rules, and we know how to get things done, and we are ready to work, and we're very excited about the challenges ahead of us.
Mahalo. Josh Green, Sylvia Luke, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to answer our questions. We invite you in the audience to join Kokua Council on Monday, November 14th, when we host our annual forum to discuss legislative priorities for the next year. Mahalo to all who participated today. Malama pono, aloha. I'm going to end our recording.
Mahalo.
Aloha.